right, I'm going to do a little bit of a canon version here of Dan Lemon's Sacred Love. We'll see how well that works out, because you know that one too.
Very good.
Your little doctor's orders said that today she gets a day off. Who asked? You did? What's the matter? You're not happy with the one-man band guy? Come on. Yeah, you know, I don't bother you when you're working. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. You are blessed peace, blessed peace is all that you are. You are blessed peace, blessed peace is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. I want to live in such a state of grace. I want to live in such a holy place. I want to live in such a state of grace. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. 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 Sacred love.
Good morning, America. How are you? I want to welcome everyone here to Unity Spiritual Center and also those people that are watching us online. We are all about transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in this world. My name is Alan Bassan, and I am the platform assistant this morning. Please take a moment now, if you will, and silence your cell phones. And while you've got them out doing that, take a moment to check in. Post on Facebook, tweet on Twitter, chat on Snapchat, whatever social app you use, and tell them that you're right here at Unity Spiritual Center. And they can be too if they check in with our online service. We want to begin our time together by sharing our opening affirmation. I will say it once and then ask you to repeat it with me. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the good. Together, there is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the good. This is Unity's foundation principle. One presence, one power, one life, living through and as each one of us. This morning we will hear from Reverend Jane, who will be sharing the Sunday message entitled, Meeting My Needs. And Dennis will be leading the meditation. We are blessed musically this morning by our one-man band, Sean Wright. As we now stand. Let's sing our community song.
Okay, if you'd stand, it'd be great. We're going to sing again in the name of God You Are. Very
I'm Dennis Ashley. I'm supposed to make announcements, but I can't make any announcements till it comes up. There we go. So, first thing I wanted to mention is we've got this canned food drive that we have going on every year. And so we would really encourage you to bring some canned food, donate it. We give it to Second Harvest, and it's just one of the nicest things that we do. So we invite everybody to participate in that. And you can bring it in during the week, too, I think every day except Monday and Friday, so that means Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The second thing is we want to say thank you to all the people who've been coming to Unity for 2 years or less. They're the ones who brought treats today. Yay! Here's the schedule. So next week, August 12th, we have the Board of Trustees bringing treats. And then August 19th, anybody who's ever visited the Bouchard Gardens. And then August 26th.
Dennis?
Yes.
Shirley and I bring August 26th.
As I was saying, on August 26th, we were really blessed because Candy and Shirley are going to bring that. So the one that you see for Seahawks fans, that will move to the following week, as we all do. Yay! By the way, on that one, which now becomes September 2nd, on that particular day, 5 years or more for those Seahawks fans. So it's from the Super Bowl year and longer. Okay, thank you very much.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am. Letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is love that sets us free. There is only love. Sing it. In this land, in this place, I remember who I am. Letting fear and worry fall away. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is
So let's take a few minutes now and move into meditation. I advise you just to get comfortable. Put down anything that you might be holding so that we can relax completely into this moment. Let's breathe into this moment. Let's be fully here and right now. And as we breathe, we do remember the truth of us deep inside, that we are love. that we are the human expression of the Spirit of God. Let me breathe again more deeply into this moment. And we just know we are filled with a sense of wonder. As our human consciousness connects knowingly with our spiritual consciousness, we understand that every need is met. As our human consciousness links with our spiritual consciousness, we know that our potential is just unlimited. It's not just that our needs are met, they are surpassed. We are one with the Spirit of God. We're one with love. We are that voice, that song of the memory of God. It touches us so deeply. It gives rise to hope and to joy and to great courage. We are the human expression of the Spirit of God. Our potential is unlimited. Let's take that knowing into the silence for a moment and just be with it. Spirit of God, you touch my heart, my soul, and my mind. You remind me of who I really am. You inform me that every need is met. And you whisper always that my potential is unlimited. So, Spirit of God, we just surrender to that knowing, to that whisper of God that gives us great, great strength. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am not Dr. Gary. Never have been.
Where is he this morning?
Where is he this morning? That's a good question. Well, just after midnight Saturday morning, Gary woke me up with intense, unbearable abdominal pain and needed to get to the hospital immediately. And so we headed to urgent care, and at 3 a.m. they admitted him for possible surgery for an intestinal obstruction. And I have to tell you that one of his biggest worries at this point was that he had a talk to deliver this morning to you all. And the doctor told him that he'd better make other plans. And meanwhile, I had already started writing the talk. To give you an update, I stopped into the hospital on the way up here. He's doing much better. The obstruction is now unobstructing itself, and he will not be needing surgery, it looks like. Yes. And the doctor told him that he would allow him to start eating with the caveat that if he has one little problem, he's going to put a camera down his stomach to see what's going on. So that's the deal. And he's tuning in this morning, so why don't we all turn around and just wave to Dr. Gary, say, get well, get well. Now his talk title was Meeting My Needs, so I decided to just go with the flow and stick with that subject and see what happened, you know. And one thing I discovered as I was doing this is that even after all these years of digital living, I can still write with a pen. Seriously, no keyboard in sight. Not only that, but I wrote this talk, or a good majority of it, in a little tiny notebook that I had in my purse. That's all I had. So I was busy writing away. So in the Q process, we discover something, that when someone judges us, or when we judge another person, there is usually an unmet need behind it. And when we look closer at it, we can usually see how our behavior stems from trying to meet that need, often in a very unskillful way. And we have found with doing the Q process so many times, so many people over the years, that those needs commonly fit into the categories of a greater sense of abundance, so this sense of having not enough. Safety and security is another one, people feeling unsafe. An experience of self-love and connection, so connection with the deeper self as well as connection with each other. A feeling of value, innate value, valuing ourselves, knowing that we are valued, knowing our worth. That could be missing. A sense of empowerment, knowing that our presence matters. Now, not always, it's not always these needs, but often these show up. They're very common, and so they show up a lot of the times. And then one of the steps of the Q process is to take some kind of authentic action that meets that need in some way. And today I'm going to talk about two of those needs, since they both showed up for me this weekend in a big way. So let me ask you a question first. Have you ever watched someone you love suffer and you are unable to help them? Anybody have that? Yes, it could be your children or your parents, your spouse, a loved one. And how does that feel for you when you are witnessing someone suffering and you can't fix it? How do you feel? Powerless, helpless. Yes, it's a horrible feeling, isn't it? And that's how it was for me to be watching Gary as he was suffering so bad. He was in horrific pain, and I couldn't take it away, you see. No amount of oming was doing it, you know, not all the back rubs I wanted to give, not going to do it. In fact, it would just be an irritant if I kept it up. So I felt like I couldn't help him. I believed that. And so I had this need for empowerment. That's what was missing for me. I felt it was very disempowering to not be able to help him. And I clued in on that the need was empowerment, because I got triggered. And I started making judgments, you see. And so hospitals are not very restful places. Have you noticed this? First, the lights are sort of hideously bright, there is noise, not just little noises, banging, clanging going on all over the there's beeping that's happening at this kind of water torture rate, you know, that drip, drip, drip. And I was in the midst of all that, feeling so worried about Gary, feeling helpless, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to meditate on the sounds. I'm going to let those sounds take me deeper into my heart. Well, you know what? That didn't work. Not at all. I got more irritated by the second. These people should be quieter. You know, this isn't helping. It's not going to help him heal. Don't they know that? Now, the problem with the Q process is that you can't get away with this anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? You can't unknow this stuff. Like, the time comes when you start to notice, oh yeah, I'm being triggered here. It's connected to something deeper. And so I realized in that moment that this was empowerment that I was missing. And because as I watched Gary go through that, I just felt so powerless. And because of that, I started to notice all the things that I was also powerless to change. You see? And started getting angry. The noise, the lights, the waiting. And so in that moment, I had this aha. Saw that I was feeling powerless, and now I'm projecting that onto everybody else, making it all their fault. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Oh, yeah. Yes. Anybody else do that? Yeah. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try something else here. Instead of making everybody else the problem and make them the matter with me, I'm going to go a different route. And I got to tell you, this time I hit the jackpot. And it was through the power of gratitude. Whoops, there's my empowerment that didn't work. Gratitude. And what I discovered was this. Gratitude is the most direct route to overcoming a sense of powerlessness and not enough. It restores the balance within us. And so I began to focus on how grateful I was for that beeping machine and how it was keeping track of Gary's vital signs. How fortunate we were to be in a well-equipped medical facility that in order to find out what was wrong. I reviewed the whole night, and I felt immense gratitude for the people in urgent care who got him a bed as soon as they could. For every doctor, every nurse, every employee who had aided us from the moment we walked through that door. I was grateful for free parking. Yeah. And an actual parking space near the door. And for the IV and the pain meds that were now working, and that the pain had subsided enough for Gary to fall into a sleep and to be comforted, even with that lighting. I was grateful for the kindness of the doctor who came to examine him. I saw the depths of compassion in his eyes. He really cared that Gary was in pain and needed help. And I was grateful for health insurance, for modern medical care. And I suddenly felt connected to everyone. I felt like I was partnering with the medical profession. I appreciated each and every one, and above all, I felt the deepest, deepest gratitude for my husband and the gifts that he brings to my life. And as I continued to furiously write all this in my little black book, I felt a shift inside of me that bridged the gap of separation. Do you see? Now that gap had arisen with my judgment about what was lacking for me in the experience I was having, and gratitude was the superhighway that bridged that gap to my own well-being. Do you see how that works? Isn't that amazing? It's such a small thing, really, if we can get ourselves to a place of gratitude. It starts the process. And so through gratitude, I was able to identify what that need was, and I gained back a sense of empowerment because I took action that demonstrated that by bringing forth this sense of partnering and then acting as his advocate whenever we had any kind of interaction with someone in the medical staff. And I did it with a deep feeling of gratitude. Now, did it make a difference in some way? I mean, did it actually contribute anything of value to that or to his healing? I don't know. But I do know this. I know that creating a coherent energetic field, which we do through the power of gratitude, changes our inner state and moves outward and affects all those around us. I do know that when there is scientific evidence that shows when a caregiver goes into a coherent state, that their loved one, even if he or she is in a coma, goes into the very same coherent state. I know that when people get together and meditate in order to lower the crime rate or lower the violence, that it works. They can measure that it works. And I know that when a group of 8 gather and do intention work, that it has an effect not only on the person receiving the intention, but on the attendees themselves. And so if I really believe all this stuff, if I really believe all the research that I find so interesting and fascinating, then I have to believe that, yes, it made a difference in some way that I don't even know. But all that I really know is that my need to be empowered was met in some way, and that things became much more harmonious in my world. Now, feeling disempowered brought forth a sense of not enough, that feeling of not enough. And that feeling stems directly from a belief in separation from spirit. It's a direct result of living our lives as if we were separate beings, cut off from our source, like a broken tree branch no longer attached to its source of nourishment. And by connecting to the heart, feeling gratitude, it was like I came into alignment with that oneness. Do you see that? With the source. That's the antidote, is to connect to the source. Connect to the source, the inner source. Why? Because that's where the needs are all met. Isn't that cool? Yeah. And then we want to consciously seek to be source in action. Be the change. Take authentic action that demonstrates what we want to see in the world. And so we stop looking outside of ourselves for our well-being, and instead we look within. We do the internal healing, learning how to do that. And practicing doing that on a regular basis is our spiritual work. Make no mistake. Because here's the thing about this. The world teaches us to look for what we need where? Outside of ourselves. And it also teaches that there's not enough to go around either. And that causes us to try to meet our needs in some outer way, through someone, through something. And it doesn't work. Have you noticed this? I mean, maybe we have a momentary respite, we buy a new car, and all is well in our world, until it isn't. My little Prius that's parked outside, I love my little Prius. It's now 13 years old and going strong. And I remember when I bought that car, it was the first brand new car I'd ever bought. I'd always bought secondhand up until then. It was a hybrid too, and they were like new on the horizon at that time. And I loved it. I was on fire. And then the first week that I had it, I was driving on the freeway and a truck went by and hit a stone, and it came up and it hit the windshield and put a mark in the top of the windshield. 3 days old. And that mark is still there. Because I decided that mark of impermanence was a good thing. That eventually this car is going to have cuts and scrapes and bangs and dings in it, and that I may as well get used to it now, right? It was inevitable. But we can use that moment as, life is wonderful, until it isn't. Because when we look to have our needs met outside of ourselves, we end up suffering because we are now at the mercy of what's going on outside in our lives. Do you know what I'm saying here? And that is very disempowering. Wouldn't you agree? Because when we rely on and are at the mercy of what's happening outside of ourselves for our well-being, we lose that empowerment. And so just take a moment with me and imagine how different your life would be if you were able to meet the needs that arise in your life without going outside of yourself, without relying on someone or something to do so. And that doesn't mean we don't ask for what we need or that we don't help each other to meet those needs. Certainly we do that, but we don't rely on it. Do you see the difference? Because we become empowered when we hold the key in our hands to meeting our own needs. Learning how to give ourselves what we commonly seek from others is the first step of overcoming a sense of not enough. You see, then we go into those relationships or whatever it is with a sense of wholeness and completeness already. We're not needy. We're not looking for someone else to complete us. So meeting our own needs is a superpower that we can learn. And the operative word there is learn. We have to practice. We have to practice. It takes some work to overcome years of conditioning. And empowerment's not the only need on the list. Another one that I dealt with this weekend was safety and security. And many of us struggle with this one. I was worried about Gary. I was fearful of what was happening. I thought he might have to have surgery. I was worried about him. I was unable to fix it. I was feeling very unsafe. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't control it. And when we look back on triggering moments that we have had, we usually will find that, especially if we say something we wish we hadn't, anybody have those kind of moments? We'll usually find it all happened because we didn't feel safe in some way and our fight and flight system was activated, right? And then we reacted. And we don't usually see that in the moment, but in hindsight it becomes apparent to us. And the question becomes, well, how do I meet a need for safety? If I don't feel safe, how can I meet that need? God is calling. What's that song? Come on. I know that song. It's one of my favorites. So, when we don't feel safe, how can we help ourselves feel safe? Are you ready? Self-compassion. Seriously, self-compassion. And again, I got to practice that this weekend. That's the quickest way to bring ourselves to a sense of safety and security through the power of self-compassion. So let's unpack that a little bit. When I look back on my school years, safety is not a word that springs to mind. Anybody else have that experience? I was always afraid to speak up, worried that I was going to look foolish, humiliating, that kind of thing. Didn't feel safe around teachers, peers. Felt like I didn't measure up to everybody else, was afraid to speak up. And what I realized that when I didn't feel safe, what was missing for me was compassion. There was not a lot of that where I went to school. In fact, the opposite was the typical environment. See? Not safe. No room for making mistakes. Not much compassion. A whole bunch of pointing and laughing. And this is not to say that people I grew up with were, to blame or were terrible people. I was right in there pointing and laughing. We were all caught in a web of fear and defensiveness, projecting our own belief that we didn't measure up on those around us. Do you know what I'm talking about here? And so how safe is it to roam the neighborhood of your mind? Do you have that insane roommate, that one that we talked about in the Untethered Soul, yapping away in there? When you look around the world, do you see evidence of people having a need for safety that's not being met? Or self-love, or empowerment, all those needs? Look online and we'll see what a jungle it is out there. And we all have grown up immersed in this human condition that comes from a belief in separation. It all stems from that. And compassion is the antidote, especially self-compassion. Can you see how by practicing having deep compassion for yourself until it becomes your baseline, how that can create for you a sense of safety? How it can meet that need? when the environment within me makes it okay for me to make a mistake, to trip and fall on my face up here and just get up and dust myself off. I'm not going to do it, but hopefully. But makes it okay that if I do, I'm going to give myself compassion. Do you see how safe that is? And any child in that kind of a learning environment will flourish, where it's safe to make mistakes. We want to do that for ourselves. Because what happens in an environment where every mistake is pounced on and laughed at? I remember reading a story once about two groups of would-be authors who gathered together in the 1940s. One was a male group. They called themselves the Stranglers. The other was a female group called the Wranglers. Now, the Stranglers used to meet once a week with their writing, and they would tear each other's work apart. They were merciless. They put it under a microscope of criticism, and they were trying to help each other improve their writing. Now, the Wranglers did the same thing, but instead, when they got together, they would support each other with some helpful feedback when asked for, but generally, they just celebrated each other's successes and continued to encourage them along the way. And when you look at the young men who were in the Stranglers, not one of them ever went on to publish anything. The Wranglers, on the other hand, between them, they all published articles, books, research papers. All of them published works. Now, guys, this is not to make it sound like the men did it wrong and the women did it right, or that there's never a time for constructive feedback, but to say that when the environment is such that it is okay to not do things perfectly, then learning happens, you see, because it's safe. So I invite you to practice self-compassion, to create that environment within yourself where it's okay for you to make mistakes, where you don't have to be perfect. Now, there's one more piece to this we want to mention today, because not only do we want to give ourselves what we needed, we want to lavish that on the world. Do you see? So here's a question. What was missing for you as a child? What was an unmet need that you have had in your childhood that you can identify right now, if you kind of think that one through? And maybe it's a sense of being valued no matter what. See, I just read, unconditional love means that we love someone even when they don't meet our conditions. That makes sense to me, see? And that kind of love seems to be a rarity in our culture. And if you were lucky enough to grow up in that, I celebrate with you. But if not, this is a good insight to have. And this is not about blame or making our parents responsible for how our life is. We do this with objectivity, what was missing. And in my case, as I mentioned, compassion was missing from my school life. And so then the next step to look at is, first, how can you give that to yourself, whatever was missing for you? Self-compassion for me. Then how can you give that to the world? Do you see? Whatever was missing for you, that's what you're here to bring and give to the world. Isn't that cool? I get so excited about this. Because I have to tell you, when I am teaching about self-compassion, when I'm writing about it, when I'm coaching people on how to do it, nothing gives me more joy. Do you see? So the next step in learning to meet your own needs is to give it away. That's why we're here. So let me ask you, what need did you have as a child that was unmet? And how can you give it to the world? So to recap, gratitude is the superhighway. Oh, yeah, give it to the world. There's the world. It's waiting. Gratitude is the superhighway from an unmet need to well-being. Self-compassion is the antidote to a need for safety and security. And give yourself what you needed as a child and then lavish it on the world. We are all here to bring peace to our world. And this is how we do it. And the world needs you to take action. Are you ready?
Yes.
Let's say it like we mean it. Are you ready? Yes! Woo! Now, before this completes my talk that I wrote on a little black book yesterday. But before we finish, I want to introduce some people who are here today. And come on down. This is Dawn Giverson, Margaret Tivron, and Dawn was my board president in Canada yes. So good to see you. He was so unfortunate to be my board president when Gary came on the scene and stole me away from the church, and he just worked so wonderfully with me. And Margaret and Dawn and Margaret now live in Nanaimo, BC. They moved to British Columbia. And are you doing ministry? Or starting to do ministry? And so they are here just for the weekend. They came for the weekend, and they're here today. And then we were going to go for lunch. I'm still going to take you for lunch, but Gary won't be joining us. Just so you know. So I just want us all to welcome them, and we're glad you're here. Thank you. It's good to be with you all. Thank you. I could feel everyone's love and support the whole weekend I was there. And I want you to know that Gary, this morning when I saw him, he was so much better. And he said, I had the whole talk written, he said. and I said, I know. And he said, and when I told him, well, I just took your title. Well, I'm still going to do my talk. I said, go for it, Gary. So I bring greetings from him and blessings, and thank you all.
Gary's will just be version 2. Unity stands for peace in the presence of conflict, for love in the presence of hatred, for forgiveness in the presence of injury. Unity honors the many names for God, the many paths for God. For we know that there is only one power, one presence, and one life. So whoever you are, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we welcome you here today. We would especially like to welcome anyone who is here for the first time. If this is your first time visiting us, and you feel comfortable raising your hand, our ushers have a gift packet for you. Please keep your hands up long enough that they can see you. There's one over here. All right. On the outside of the packet, there is a form that you can fill out and to be added to our mailing list for our weekly e-news update and our quarterly newsletter. If you are interested, please fill it out and drop it in the love offering bag as it comes around instead of feeling obligated to give a donation. Also, after the service, and this is the big one, you can take that packet to our barista stand and get a free beverage of your choice. And you can take it to our bookstore and get a CD of today's Sunday talk. We are so glad you are here. Now is the time to welcome and greet each one with a handshake, a hug, a wave, a high five, a namaste. You can even curtsy if you want. Let's begin with our welcome song.
All right, you can stand if you're able. Let's sing this gathering song. We are gathering in song, welcoming the oneness, opening the doors of spirit wide. We are walking in tonight, starting out together, a journey through the miracles of time. We are gathering in song,
Good morning, everybody. I hate to disturb this love fest. This is great. My name is Jim Sledge. I am the treasurer on your board of trustees, and it's my pleasure here to start off our time together where we give gratitude for all that we have and gratitude for your financial support of this wonderful, amazing place. Isn't it amazing where we have one person who is scheduled to talk, and the next thing you know, you got another. Doesn't get any better than that. And Gary, we hope we speed you on your recovery so you can get back for that talk that you wrote. Really? Well, blessings to you. Let's take our offerings, our love offering, our gratitude into our hearts, and let's say our prosperity blessing together. And those of you who are online, let's join us as well. I know that my giving blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give and receive. I give thanks for the abundance that is mine to share. And so it is.
Well, as always, I have an interesting story about this song. This particular song, a gentleman came up to me at the church about 5 years ago and said, you know what, I would love to hear you sing this song. And I said, you're right, you know, that is a good song, and I have just not given that any consideration. It took me 5 years to get around to the song. So I'm going to sing that for that guy today. Unfortunately, he's not here. Heard there was a steel chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? When it goes like this, the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift, and the Battle King is composing hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Faith is strong, she needed proof. You saw her waiting on the roof, her beauty in the moonlight over through life. To her kitchen chair, she broke your throat and she cut your hair, and from her lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch, but love is not a victory march. It's cold and it's broken. Hallelujah. Surely there's a God above, but all I ever learned from love was how to shoot someone who I truly love. It's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not someone who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's broken. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Thank you to our one-man band. That's awesome. We give thanks for these gifts, for those who have given them, as we send them forth to bless our world. Amen. There you go. And as we give thanks for these gifts we are receiving here at Unity Spiritual Center, we want to take time to thank all of those who service our ministry. Today we are saying a special thank you to the Foundation board members. I'd like to invite Al Koenigsfeld up to tell us a little bit about the Foundation. And if you're part of that board, stand up.
Good morning, my name is Al Koenigsfeld. I'm the president of the Unity Foundation Board. Our current foundation board is Suzanne Croft, Sally Sledge, Diane Hunter, Gary Locke, and Jane Geisel, who's out with the kids at the moment. And there are a number of people. This board has been going on for years and years and years. So please, and Al, continue yourself, those of you who have served on that board, please stand up and be recognized, because there's a lot of you out here. More than just my current group. And so if they said foundation board, what the heck's that? Well, that's actually my reaction when Helen asked me to join years ago. So what we do is, for years, various congregants have given us donations and bequests. We take that money, we invest it, and we use the profits from those investments to keep this building over our head. So you may remember last spring we had this interesting little shower going on right outside the door. Gary Locke hauled up, found some contractors, got them up on the roof, they fixed it, the foundation paid for it. Several years ago, Sean and Tawny led the choir through a magnificent show, raised a bunch of money to produce this wonderful stage. But even with David Lineweber and his crew out here volunteering to put it together, we fell a little short. It was the foundation that made a matching grant that made that happen. So that's the sort of thing that we try to do. My dream for the board is to have enough money under investment that no repair, whether it is regular maintenance or something catastrophic, ever has to come out of a collection plate, that it can come through the board. So if you'd like somebody like me to stand up and say really nice things at your memorial service, please talk to your financial advisor and remember us in your will. Thank you so much.
Really? I mean, is that really what it's going to take?
Well, for some of us, yes. Our chaplains today are Charles and Murphy. And Charles has been sitting at the back of the service holding our entire service in prayer. Could you guys come up? One of our chaplains does that every service. If you have anything that is heavy on your heart or anything that you would like to celebrate, you can pray with one of our chaplains and they will hold it in prayer with you. They will be available up front here after this, right in the front of the sanctuary after the service. Thank you guys for your service. You can also fill in a prayer request form found in the seat pocket in front of you and put it in one of our prayer boxes, one up here in front of the sanctuary and one out in the foyer. Our prayer team here at Unity prays with you for 7 days, and then the prayers will be sent to Silent Unity to be prayed on for another 30 days. And if you know of someone who is in the hospital and has requested a visit from one of our chaplains, please fill in the visitation request form in the seat back pocket and place it in the prayer box. It is now time for our kiddos. Let's welcome them in with Walking in the Light.
Thank you. We are singing with all this joy is our life. We are singing for this joy is our life. We are singing for this joy is our life. We are singing for this joy is our life. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this joy is our life. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this joy is our life. We are singing for this love is our life. We are singing for this love is our life. We are singing for this love is our life. We are singing for this love is our life. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this love is our life. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this love is our life. We are singing for this love is our life. We are singing for this love is our life.
All right. Well, everybody, this is the first Sunday of the month, so you know what that means. It's Birthday Sunday.
You know
So
what? We're going to pass on that one until next Sunday.
we are.
We are, because it's a very special piano arrangement, and I can't play it on the guitar.
Oh. Well, forget about all that nice stuff I said about our one-man band. All right. We will postpone our Birthday Sunday till next
All
Sunday.
right, Alice birthdays, it's on me. Next Sunday.
All right, here we go. All right, we are very grateful for all of our young people here at Unity Spiritual Center. They are our future. Let's take a moment, if we can, and bless our children and all the youth and those in our youth ministry. Be the love you are. Sing the song you hear. Share your joy of life with people far and near. And for ourselves. Be the love we are. Sing the song we hear. Share our joy of life with people far and near. All right, kids, go find the people that brought you. All right, and would everybody please stand if you're able and join us for our closing prayer, followed by the peace song.
By the way, Gary just texted me and he said, I did write my talk.
And you gave it.
No, it was mine. He wrote another one. All right. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
And that's the truth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be with God our Creator, and we all are weak. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin.
Choir tryouts are coming up.
Remember to give yourself what you need and then lavish it on the world. And so it is.